These are the 4 most important foundational design principles that you must know how to use if you want to be a good UI designer. If you can master these 4 foundational design principles, your designs will go from meh to wow. All right, what are these 4 foundational principles that you need to know? Well, I tell you, they're a giant load of crap. That's right, the acronym of the day is C.R.A.P, and that stands for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Some of you out there thought I was just saying something inappropriate, but no. It has purpose. All right, contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity. What do they mean? What do they do? Let's jump over and take a look right now at our very first one, and that's contrast. It's all about organizing your design, establishing hierarchy, emphasizing a focal point, and adding visual interest. You can do this a lot of different ways. You can add contrast with color, with weight, with size, in typography, with imagery. There's so many different ways that you can do this, but let's look at just a few ways in our demonstration today. So we're going to jump over to our starting file, and we have the start of a website or layout. Doesn't really matter, but we just don't have a whole lot of contrast. We have the start to some contrast with a button down here that has a color. It kind of stands out, but we also have a headline. We have no visual interest here, so we want to start adding a little bit of contrast in all of these areas to kind of bring this layout to life. The first thing we can do just right here in our typography is we can change this piece of typography into a headline and add a little bit of size, a little bit of weight, and maybe we'll even add a little bit of color. So it's at 24 right now. Let's just bump it up and make it a little bit bigger. 54 pixels for this one. It's not an exact formula, it's just bigger. And when we do that, let's also take this and move this 2 weights from medium to semi-bold. Now we actually have some contrast between this text and this text. We're going to bring them together a little bit so they kind of go together. And now we need, that says go outside, so let's make sure it says go outside. But what's the focal point here of this layout or website? What's the whole purpose of the content? It's most likely about bikes. So why don't we add a little bit more interest here? Why don't we fill this with a nice bright color, and we can experiment with putting it, a little bit closer to our text. Now we have some contrast between our body copy and our headline. All right, now we can do our next thing, which is add a little bit of visual interest or more of a focal point with our bike. Let's just make that a little bit bigger, kind of offset it off the canvas here. And maybe we're not really focusing on alignment right now, but let's grab our nav items and line them up, and we'll just bring our button up into kind of our layout for our text and everything. Put this here, and this layout just looks about 100 times better, and there's just a little bit of contrast added. You could add way more, you could do a lot more in this layout, but this is just the start of creating some visual interest, some hierarchy, organizing the information using our first letter in our acronym, C for contrast. All right, let's talk next about repetition. Repetition is all about increasing consistency and a user's ability to learn your interface or your layout. It reduces confusion when we add repetition to our layouts. I'll jump back into my training file, and you can see we have maybe another sub page of our website or a different layout, but we have the same information. It's just thrown around. It looks like a yard sale. It looks really messy. So we want to add some repetition, and the more repetition that we can add, the easier it is for our user to learn our interface. Let's just go with one. Let's pick one, and let's make everything else match up a little bit, right? So in this use case here, or in this case, we have a bike on the left. Let's bring it all the way to the top. Let's shift it around so all our bikes are facing the same way. Let's bring this bike up to the top. We can try as much as we possibly can to add some alignment. Let's grab all of our kind of our cards, and we'll line them all to the bottom, and we will distribute these evenly. And we might need to grab all the images of our bikes and line those up as well so they have some even spacing. And now we have just a little bit of repetition. Now, it doesn't matter which way you repeat. You can repeat things horizontally or vertically, diagonally. It doesn't matter. Repetition is adding some rhyme or reason, some meaning, some order, some structure to your layouts. And I'll tell you, it's going to be way better than the yard sale that it was before. All right, let's jump back over and talk about our next design principle, which is alignment. Alignment organizes and groups elements together. It creates rhythm. It brings order to chaos. We did that a little bit with repetition, but we needed to make sure that things were aligned. Notice in our practice file, we went about aligning things to the bottom of our typography, but now we have another issue here about creating some rhyme or reason, some sense of structure with our alignment. Now, what's really cool is we can grab all of our cards or all of our content, just like we did last time, distribute them and line them up. These are really, really messy. So we're gonna grab all of our text here and make sure they're aligned on the left-hand edge. Look how much better that looks. And then we'll grab each of our pieces of text and we will align those to the center with our image of the bike. This one is really mixed up. And now we can grab all three of those and we can distribute them. Now, what's great is once we group these things together, we can see that we've actually created a series of invisible accesses, right? These are invisible lines that are running horizontally and vertical in our layout. We can see that by drawing a rectangle here. We have an invisible access that's taking place there, right? We have another one. We have a bunch of them actually that are running horizontally on the tops and bottoms of each of these sections. Now from here, it doesn't matter which way we actually move or rotate or annotate all the elements that we've aligned, because as long as they are aligned on one invisible axis, there's still order and reason. We could grab all of these things, we can rotate them to the side, and we can scale all of this up, and then we can hide our overlay here. Now, this may not be your cup of tea as far as your layout goes, but it still makes sense. Even though it's diagonal off canvas, you can't read it. You can definitely improve this layout, that there is some structure and rhyme and reason, because now our invisible accesses are still there. They're just rotated a different way. And so creating a sense of alignment will organize even the messiest or experimental layout that you're working on. Let's talk about our last principle of the day, and that is proximity. Proximity makes elements seem related, like they belong together. It brings understanding and meaning to multiple elements by grouping them together. Everybody loves to have a friend, and so all the elements in your design, they'd probably like to have a friend too. Let's jump into our design file. We'll head over to our proximity. The question becomes, does this headline belong to this text? Do these buttons belong together? And where the heck does this Black Friday 50% off deal, where does that live? We just don't know. All right, let's start from the top to bottom and we'll start adding a little bit of proximity. First off, we don't know if these navigation elements belong together. So we're gonna push them over just like so. Actually, let's just grab all three of them and we will tidy them up. We'll make sure that they are distributed evenly and we can space them however we want. But because they have even spacing and they're next to each other and we group them together, now they all seem like they belong together. How about this typography here, this body copy? Does it belong to this headline? It does, but it doesn't look like it right now. It looks like a distant relative. Let's make it part of the family by bringing it a little bit closer. How about this button? We'll bring that closer to the other button, and maybe we'll add our Black Friday deal text right underneath it. And we'll grab these items, group those together, and that's part of this layout as well. Let's bring it up and group the whole thing together. We'll bring it out to the side so we add some alignment to our layout, and let's add some visual interest, creating some white space, but some contrast and a little bit of visual interest with our image. And we can do that a little bit more by, again, highlighting our word bikes and changing that to some sort of fun contrasting color. This layout is about 100 times better than it was previously because we've applied contrast, repetition, alignment, and now proximity. All right, those are the 4 most important design principles if you want to be a good UI designer. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you know when more videos like this one come out. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down in the comments. Check the description for some helpful links. Let me know what other design principles you think are super important. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having an amazing week. Hope you're designing amazing things, making amazing things, and I hope you are nailing these foundations to make your designs absolutely fantastic. I'll see you in the next one.